and welcome to Stars on Sustainability, where we speak with eclectic changemakers who are shaping a better world. I'm Shagun, your host, and today we have a very special episode. Rita Roy Chaudhary, managing partner at eCube, had the opportunity to speak with Ricky Cage, three-time Grammy winner, Padma Shri awardee, and UN Goodwill ambassador. Ricky is one of India's most prominent voices in global music and environmental advocacy. We recorded this episode at Ricky's home in Bangalore, where he shared his thoughts on music, the role of artists as activists, and the meaning of hope in the era of climate change. Hit play to hear this very special conversation.
Ricky, it's so wonderful to meet you here in your hometown in Bangalore. I remember the last time, or the first time we met, was in 2018 in New Delhi during your concert at the World Environment Day, for which India was the host country then, and how you captivated the audience. The last time I saw your concert was at the Dubai Opera House during COP28, and it was a mind blowing concert. So, amazing journey, Ricky, and it's so wonderful to be talking to you here today. So, stepping back, your most acclaimed albums, Winds of Samsara and Divine Tides, that won you your Grammys, what would you say really drove the message around global peace and environmental consciousness? How did that kind of come into your albums?
Great seeing you again too. I remember those concerts very fondly in 2018 when India was the host for the World Environment Day. And we did two concerts, in fact. We did one which was like a smaller, more intimate concert, and we did one which was right in front of the India Gate.
Right.
And of course, the Dubai concert for the COP28, that was also, it was a great experience.
Absolutely.
So ever since I remember, I've always been two things. I've always been a musician and I've been an environmentalist. Even before I knew what the meaning of the word environmentalist was, I was an environmentalist. So I grew up in a very small town in America for the first 6 years of my life, in a small town called as Roanoke Rapids in North Carolina. And we had a lot of wooded areas, a small stream, a brook flowing, behind our home. And just about half a kilometer away, there was the Roanoke River. So a lot of wildlife, a lot of nature over there, lots of trees, lots of flora and fauna. And we would have a lot of so-called creepy crawly animals that would constantly enter our home. Animals like snakes and lizards and chameleons, frogs, all of these animals. And I remember very clearly that as a child, my parents and my teachers would tell me that as soon as you see any of these animals, just step on them and kill them immediately, And, at that young age, my question to them always used to be that if you're supposed to kill them as soon as we see them, then why do they exist? They obviously have some purpose. And of course, now all of us know what our ancient Indian traditions have taught us for so many centuries and thousands of years, that every single species of animal, no matter how seemingly insignificant, is a very important part of our ecosystem. And it's this delicate balance of this ecosystem that keeps all of us alive. So I guess, as I said, musician, environmentalist, and then I ended up becoming a professional musician. That in itself is a huge story, but nevertheless, I became a professional musician. And these two worlds of mine came together. And, that is when I decided that this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And, and I want to create music on topics which are very dear to me, and topics which I feel very strongly about celebrating nature, celebrating the environment, and of course, even talking about various issues and what are the solutions that are available in today's time. And that's what happened with my career. And my first major album, which won my first Grammy award, that is, even though it was my 16th album, but it's the album of reckoning, as they call it, because it won me my first major award. So Winds of Samsara was about that. It was about the message of peace, love and tolerance by Mahatma Gandhi and Nelson Mandela. Because my collaborator for that album was a South African musician, a guy called Wouter Kellerman, who also played with us in 2018.
Right.
He performed with us for those concerts. So the reason why we did this was that during that time I started traveling the length and breadth of India, Africa, basically the global South, and I started realizing that there are only two kinds of problems in this world. One is a problem of thriving, and one is a problem of survival. Okay, if you have to classify every single problem that we have. And when it comes to the global north, when it comes to the developed nations, they've already tackled this problem of survival. And they are focusing more on thriving. And that's why environment can play a very important role when it comes to, these countries. But when it comes to a country in the global south, uh, unfortunately, the environment and climate change is not looked upon as a problem of survival, it's looked upon as a problem of thriving.
Yeah.
And more immediate problems are problems of survival, like poverty, hunger, malnutrition, gender inequality, gender violence, water, sanitation, all of that stuff. So I started to realize that one has to show empathy towards every single section of society, and one has to understand that you have to have a very holistic view towards problem solving. And that's what that album was all about. Because Mahatma Gandhi said stuff like, that the earth has enough for everybody's need, but not for everybody's greed. Also, Mahatma Gandhi said that the moral compass of a society and a nation can be defined by how that nation treats its animals. And more importantly, there was this thing in 1938 when Mahatma Gandhi was told by the British that, the then president of America had said that he would consider American society to be successful if everybody had one car and two radio sets. Okay, and Mahatma Gandhi laughed at that, and he said that he does not consider that to be a measure of any kind of success of society, because if everybody has a car, there would be too many cars, and there would be no place for people to walk.
Right.
And now we are seeing that, happen. We are seeing that manifest. So he was way ahead of his time in his thinking, and that's the reason why we thought that it should be about Mahatma Gandhi and about Nelson Mandela, since Nelson Mandela was very heavily inspired by the non-violence movement by Mahatma Gandhi, and that's how that album came out to be. So it is an album about environmental consciousness, but it's much larger than that.
So nice. So Ricky, you've collaborated with musicians across the globe, band members, leading band members. Do you also collaborate with environmental activists and organizations in your creative process to bring out that authenticity in your message?
So I've always said that, with all the problems that we face on our planet, whether it is environmental problems or social problems, I believe that the biggest threat to us is the constant thought that somebody else will make a difference. We're always waiting for governments, for intergovernmental bodies, for corporations, for NGOs to make a difference, when the truth is that the only way we can bring about meaningful change is if we change our own behaviors. Because everybody talks about changing the world, and even I'm guilty of doing that many times, but we very rarely talk about changing ourselves.
Exactly.
And it's not because we're evil people, it's simply because the way that we have built our systems around us, we just believe that we are very insignificant. That if I stop using single-use plastics, what difference will it make? Or if I reduce my consumption of fossil fuels, what difference will it make? But it does make a huge difference. Now, how do we encourage all of us around us to make these small incremental changes within our own lives and to believe that we are significant? Now, we can showcase a ton of scientific data to people, which is extremely important. Exactly. But if we can showcase a lot of scientific data, analytics and statistics to people, and it will not change mindsets. But what is needed is for musicians and artists to collaborate with those scientists. Because at the end of the day, scientists and thought leaders, they are really good at figuring out what the problems are and what the solutions are. But they're probably not that good at communicating this to people and changing mindsets.
Right.
So that is where artists come along. So that is why this collaboration between institutions, between intergovernmental organizations, between scientists and with the artists. So all of them on one side and the artists on the other side. These kind of collaborations become extremely important because the artists are really good at communicating and really good at hitting the hearts and souls of people so that you hit people in a very emotional way, and that will really inspire people to bring about change. And so that is why I believe that these collaborations are very, very important. And I'm always, collaborating with scientists. I'm always collaborating with institutions, with intergovernmental organizations, so that I can craft my narratives. And I myself can be sensitized to these problems, because only if I'm sensitized to these problems, only then I can sensitize other people.
Also, can you share a story about a specific project or a composition that you did that came out of a real environmental concern?
So we've spoken about this in the past, and also you've seen my concerts where I've performed this song. It's so basically there's a specific island nation. It's called as Kiribati, And I remember during the COP21, the Paris Climate Change Conference, our Prime Minister had launched an album of mine along with the then French President François Hollande and the then Secretary General Ban Ki-moon.
Yes.
And so I was very intently watching the climate change conference because of this, and of course other reasons too. But so I realized that there is a main plenary hall at these conferences, and at the main plenary hall during the whatever week-long or 10-day conference, every single world leader comes up over there and gives a presentation, which is usually between 10 or 15 minutes long.
Right.
And they speak about their commitments to the environment or the issues they're facing, but whatever it is that they want to convey when it comes to climate change with respect to their own nation. So there were some fantastic speeches. Prime Minister Modi also gave a beautiful speech on climate justice. But one world leader who really stood out for me is President Anote Tong of the island nation of Kiribati. So he went up on stage, President of the Republic of Kiribati, and he gave a 30-second presentation. He said that all you nations present over here, all you 195 nations present over here, please pass a resolution that ensures that my people of Kiribati stay above the water. And that was a very powerful statement, and I'm really ashamed to say that I had not even heard of this country, let alone her disastrous fate. So I studied about Kiribati and I realized that it's 21 inhabited islands, very low-lying atoll islands, right in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, in almost complete isolation. And it's predicted that they're going to be the first country to go completely underwater due to climate change, which means that the tallest point in any of the islands during our lifetime is going to go completely underwater, and they're going to disappear from the face of the earth. So we're going to have to redo our maps and our globes, because the part where Kiribati is, you're going to have to paint in blue. So I had to see things for myself. So I went over there, spent a lot of time in Kiribati, and I realized that people who are not at fault when it comes to climate change are the worst affected. Because climate change has nothing to do with Kiribati. They are an environmentally conscious society. They don't take more than they can give back from the environment, almost negligible carbon emissions or pollution. But yet, they are suffering the consequences of our actions. So I made a song with the local population in Kiribati and with their president. Their president did a spoken word passage, and I play the song at pretty much every concert of mine. 2 times now at the UN headquarters in New York. I performed it at the UN headquarters in Geneva, at various intergovernmental events all over the world. And what I would like to believe is that we created a lot of consciousness when it came to this particular country, not just about the country's fate, but also to showcase that climate change is not some vague phenomenon that may or may not happen in the future, right, or a polar bear may or may not die, after 10 or 15 years. It's not a vague concept. It's absolutely real. It is quantifiable, and and there are current victims of climate change. It's not victimless. There are people who are suffering the effects of climate change. So this song created a lot of awareness on climate change, created a lot of awareness on this country, and created a lot of awareness that that if all of us countries could build domes around our borders, and developed nations and developing nations, and keep our pollution within our own borders, then countries like Kiribati have nothing to worry about.
Yeah.
But then the problem is that our carbon emission becomes everybody's carbon emission, because it's one atmosphere,
yes,
and a very thin one. And because of this, we all know the drill. Global temperatures rise, polar ice caps melt, ocean levels rise. And since they're low-lying islands, as I said, they are suffering the consequences of our actions.
Yeah. No, I think it's such a powerful message, and it really moves everyone. And I remember when I was at the Dubai Opera, at your concert last year during COP28, and a friend of mine who was accompanying me to that concert, and at that time you just spoke about Kiribati, and the video message of the president was playing on the large screen behind you. And she exclaimed and she said, "Oh my goodness, I didn't even know about the kind of crisis that a small island nation like that is facing." And for the first time, so how powerful that can be in terms of even moving somebody, even your music touching even one person's emotions and moving them towards real action. On this can be so powerful, right?
Absolutely. And plus, our President Anote Tong, he was the 3-term president. And of course, he's no longer the president right now because he termed out. The maximum terms that somebody can have is 3 terms in Kiribati as a president. But he's talking about that, the presentation that I did over there and the song. He said something very powerful. He said that in all of your nations, he said you all have hurricanes and disasters and cyclones. And he said that the water enters your home. And at some point it recedes. and that's what you believe, that it's going to recede, and it does recede, the water, at some point. But he's like, when it comes to our country and climate change, the water keeps coming into our home. It just keeps coming into our home till that time when our home becomes part of the ocean bed.
I also want to ask you about, the role of artists in promoting sustainability and environmental awareness. How do you see music as a tool for influencing public attitudes and awareness? I know that you also, in 2018, I think, you were named in the Real Leaders 100 list. And that's a list of leaders who inspire the future. So it's wonderful. And therefore, like, what is the role that artists can play in really inspiring future action?
So I've touched upon it a little bit earlier in this talk, but what I'd like to add is that we cannot talk about the future without involving children, and I think that's really important.
Yes.
So what I did was that in 2018, I had created this new project. It was called My Earth Songs, along with two very close friends of mine, Lonnie Park and Dominic De Cruz. And these are basically 30 songs based on sustainability. Like, we've got a song which is about plastics. We've got a song which is about teaching children what climate change is.
And all the 17 SDGs, I believe.
Yeah, they're inspired by the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, and each and every song is fun. No doom and gloom, no post-apocalyptic world, nothing like that. It's all fun. It's fun for children to learn, and it's very simple songs that, in a single listening, a child can learn up the song. Like, for example, the song on climate change, on carbon footprint, the chorus goes like, I'm going to leave a mark on this earth, but it's not going to be a carbon footprint, Okay. So that kind of stuff. We've got a song called as Plastic War, which is like, children marching and they're going to war against, plastic trash and against single-use plastics. So all the songs are a lot of fun. And we put that into, into textbooks in schools. And currently we are in, I think we've crossed over 20 million textbooks all over the world. In English-speaking countries. Thank you. And in India, in fact, we are in ICSE and CBSE textbooks, a lot of them, from classes 1 to class 8. And this has been really successful because the songs that you learn during your childhood are songs that you never forget.
Right.
And if there are any morals in those songs, those morals stick with you forever. And you almost base your life on those morals. So that is why they've been quite successful. And we've received a lot of, messages from parents and teachers, parents telling us that, our children are shaming us into action, and thank you for teaching our children these songs. And in fact, schools, like there's this one school in Delhi which had, the principal had written to us saying that there's this open area that they were planning to build a building. And it seems that the children protested that, no, we need the open area because a lot of birds come in over here, and trees are good for us and things like that. So that's why they stopped that construction of that building. So there've been a lot of positivity through those songs, and I'm very glad about that.
That's wonderful, and congratulations for this. I mean, it's wonderful to be in the textbooks and these songs that you're doing for the children. I think children can really influence parental behavior.
Absolutely.
So what message of hope do you want to convey to your listeners? And, you already spoke about children, but in general to all your audiences around the world, especially to the future generation.
I think it's very important not to be anxious and depressed about what is going on. It's important to have a lot of hope because things are not lost. I've always believed that there are two ways to communicate problems of the environment. One way is shaming people into action, which I would call, let's say, the Greta Thunberg approach. And I believe that it is effective in some ways, like, for example, getting governments to do the right thing and getting leaders to do the right thing. But it does not have a very long-term effect. That's what I personally believe. And also, people sometimes, instead of being drawn into bringing about change, sometimes are pushed away because of the way this communication is done. Many times when you see a lot of doom and gloom on social media, you end up scrolling faster, So that's the way it is. The second method is what I would call the Sir David Attenborough approach, where you showcase what is beautiful in this world and hopefully, get everybody to fall in love with that beauty, and then, get everybody to protect, to conserve, and to sustain because of that. So I believe that that is a better approach, simply because you are not adding to the mental trauma and anxiety, especially that children are facing today.
Right.
There are so many people who come up to me and tell me, especially from institutions and schools,
Yes.
that that our children are just depressed, and
Yes.
they're facing mental health issues. And mental health is a massive issue in today's time and age, and we should not be adding to that. So our communication needs to be positive, it needs to be beautiful. Like Baba Diom, the Senegalese philosopher,
Yeah.
he had once said that at the end of the day, we as human beings, we will only protect things that we love. And that is basically within our nature. We only protect things that we love, like our immediate family or immediate circle or, that kind of a thing. And we will only love things that we understand, and we will only understand things that we are taught.
So finally, Ricky, what message or advice would you have for platforms like the Earth Inherited or similar platforms?
I think sensitization, and I've used that word many times during this podcast, but sensitization, I think, is the most important thing. Because, there was this, during the pandemic, I think in 2020, there was this photograph which made its way everywhere in the world of this female pregnant elephant, which was dead in the, in Kerala, in a water body in a river. She was just standing over there and she was dead, and it was found out that she was pregnant. And this was a very heartbreaking image, which pretty much every publication everywhere in the world had published. And the story behind it is that this female pregnant elephant, she walked out of the forest in search of food, and she went to this particular farmer's field, and she ate a fruit, which was a pineapple, and little did the elephant know that the pineapple was filled with explosives. So the explosives fatally damaged her mouth, and then she wobbled away while she was dying, and she went to the river, and she stood right in the middle of the river, and she passed away over there. And of course, there were, all these cries and loud, calls for, punishing the farmer. The farmer should be hung upside down. The farmer should be killed. The farmer should be given a death sentence or put life imprisonment and all of that stuff. And I absolutely agree that the farmer needs to be punished. But the problem is in today's world is that we've stopped looking inwards. Because if you think about it, we people who live in cities, if we do not have electricity for about 2 or 3 minutes, we are so inconvenienced. If a new iPhone comes out and it goes out of stock, or any kind of a gadget, if it comes out and goes out of stock, we're like, why can't they make more of those? Why aren't they manufacturing enough for the people? But where is all that coal for our electricity coming from? It's coming from digging up those forests where the elephant lives, destroying the elephant's food sources. And where is all that manganese, iron, nickel, cadmium, silica, all of that stuff which the gadgets are being made of? Where is that coming from? From digging up those forests. So basically, it's our consumption patterns sitting down in cities which is destroying those forests. And because of that, the food sources of the elephant is getting depleted. So the elephant has no other option but to move out of the forest to find food. And they go into a farmer's field. And the farmer has got no other alternative but to take this absolutely ridiculous and punishable, decision to actually, save his or her livelihoods and the lives of his or her family by creating these deterrents for the elephant, by putting these explosives in fruits, and by having these electric fences and all of that stuff. So at the end of the day, it is our consumption patterns which has actually killed that elephant. So that sensitization needs to happen. And a lot of children today believe that, their rice is born, in a supermarket. And now it's gone even worse, that the rice is born on Swiggy or on Zomato or something like that. They do not understand that rice is actually grown in a paddy field, and that paddy field needs to be flooded for a whole lot of days. And if children actually go to these paddy fields and meet the farmers and they're sensitized to this, then they would probably not waste food, because they would know how much of effort has gone into making that bowl of rice that they're eating.
Seeing is believing.
Exactly. And it's same thing with clothes. Like if we sensitize ourselves to, let's say, a cotton pant like the one that I'm wearing. For a cotton pant, it's said that about 15 cotton plants are required to actually create a cotton pant. So imagine the amount of land usage for that. It takes 150 days for the cotton plants to be harvested. And so imagine, like, that itself is 5 months of growing those cotton plants, and then using all those pesticides, destroying the groundwater, and watering the fields, and then plucking those plants, and then after that sending them to a completely different country on a large carbon footprint. for processing, then after that for dyeing, for manufacturing to another country, and then sold all over the world. So leaving aside the carbon footprint, the water footprint for a single pair of cotton trousers is about 8,000 liters of water. So imagine that, if we are sensitized to that, probably we will buy lesser clothes and we won't indiscriminately buy a whole lot of cotton pants and cotton t-shirts because we'll understand that. And of course, the other materials are even worse because they've got fossil fuels in them and, and they've got plastics in them. So basically, we just need to sensitize. I think education and sensitization, I feel, is the most important thing. And that will create a ground-up movement because the top-down movement is failing us everywhere in the world when it comes from governments. Because governments will not do anything unless there is a ground-up movement and we demand for more sustainable practices.
So also I wanted to ask you about, you're the UNCCD Goodwill Ambassador, and UNCCD is all about combating desertification, land degradation,
Correct.
and deforestation. While deforestation, people really understand, there's so little understanding around land degradation and desertification, and people don't see it, how it can impact their lives unless they're actually living it, people around the world. And you created a song for that as well, Born from the Land, right? So tell us about that.
So yeah, I've been working with the UNCCD, as you know, since about 2019, very closely with them. And I think they're an amazing organization which works towards preventing land desertification and drought. And of course, also working towards, fertile land, as they say. So it's very obvious that climate change affects, land, causing land desertification, and land desertification has got an exponential effect on climate change, simply because the land is losing its carbon capturing capacity. And they say that the cheapest way to combat the effects of climate change is through ensuring that there is enough fertile land and preventing land desertification.
Right.
But the problem goes even further than that. It goes into social issues, where it is said that the worst affected when it comes to land desertification is actually the women, for various reasons. And that's the reason why, the UNCCD started this campaign known as Her Land, Her Rights.
Right.
Because, if we think about it closely and if we sensitize ourselves to these issues, then it comes to our mind that, if there is land desertification and land is no longer cultivable, then, then there is forced migration. And it's usually the men who move to the larger cities.
Right.
And the women and the children are left behind, and the men end up starting a new family, in the city that they are in, and the women are completely left behind without any money.
Exactly.
And it's the women who do the most amount of work when it comes to agriculture on the field. And when land has to be sold because of land desertification or drought, or because the land is no longer cultivable, then the women do not make any money because they do not own the land. And in fact, in a lot of countries in this world, over 50 countries in this world, there is no law where the woman actually inherits the land from their parents. And so there are a lot of issues when it comes to land desertification, which move on to social issues and move on to gender inequality issues. So that is why it is not only an environmental concern, it's also a strong social and a financial concern. And also not to forget that over half of the population of the world depends upon land directly for their sustenance, and not just environmental sustenance, but also financial sustenance.
Right.
So I guess if we go on as usual, the way that we grow our crops, the way that we grow our crops for eating and for our fibers for our clothes, and also the way that we go about our animal agriculture, I think that's not a sustainable way of treating our land. And that's what the UNCCD looks at. The UNCCD looks at better ways to actually utilize our land, and better ways to combat problems of hunger and problems of drought and desertification.
Absolutely. And I think it can have transformational impacts across all the SDGs, right? All the Sustainable Development Goals.
Absolutely. Everything is interconnected at the end of the day.
Right. Great. So, Ricky, earlier you spoke about an environmental concern that inspired your musical compositions. Can you describe a project or a composition that gave you real hope and confirmed your belief in the power of music to drive change?
I guess it would be the children's project itself that I mentioned. I think because that got a lot of immediate effects. Since it is in the school curriculum and the school textbooks, what happens is that every year when the new students join, And when students get access to the new textbooks, I get a whole lot of Instagram messages from kids, almost like 2 or 3 thousand, in June, July every year, where kids say that, oh, like we listened to your song, or we learned your song today in school, and we're going to follow it, and things like that. So I guess that's the best way of affecting change, when you start with the children.
Yeah, and it's so gratifying.
Yeah, it is. It is.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you for that wonderful message, Ricky. And it's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much.